Hello, dear friend. Thank you for hanging out with a couple of multiples today. We are your hosts, Drew
and Garden System. We are a married couple that both have dissociative identity disorder, or DID.
The reality of living with multiplicity is nothing like what you might see in the movies or on soap operas. This mental health condition often goes unnoticed, even by mental health professionals. Did you know that someone with DID spends an average of 6 to 12 years in the mental health system before receiving a correct diagnosis? This is because there is still a prevailing belief, even among clinicians, that DID is rare. The truth is that there are around 120 million people all over the world that meet the criteria according to the DSM-5.
We are glad that you are here to learn all about dissociative identity disorder. Whether you are someone living with multiplicity, a supporter, or a mental health professional, you are making a difference by choosing to listen to this podcast today. You can help dispel myths about DID and help spread awareness by sharing this podcast with a friend or loved one.
Please visit acoupleofmultiples.com and sign up for our mailing list to learn all about our private paid community called Hearts Multiplied on the Circle platform. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star review. And for our Apple listeners, we would really appreciate you leaving us a written review.
Together, we can make a difference by taking the disorder out of dissociative identities. We are honored to have a Gold Plus sponsor for Season 2.
The Institute for Creative Mindfulness is one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, founded and directed by Dr. Jamie Pless-Marich, author of Dissociation Made Simple. Dr. Jamie is the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural, and since 2015, she's offered the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We have never felt more accepted and validated as a multiple than when we were able to show up authentically as Garden System for our basic EMDR training. Having lived experience is valued and respected in these training courses.
Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers.
Are you interested in becoming a sponsor? Please send an email to admin@acoupleofmultiples.com to request more information.
Hello there, and thank you for tuning into this special moving guest episode with Drew
and Garden System,
a couple of multiples.
As you learned from our previous episodes, we are a married couple that were both diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, or DID. Today, we have Alicia, who is a dance educator, performer, and choreographer based out of Columbus, Ohio. Alicia fell in love with dance because of its endless possibilities for creative physical expression. Movement has been an integral part of her personal recovery from a trauma-induced eating disorder.
Alicia has taught dance technique and facilitated movement experiences in therapeutic, classroom, and community settings, as well as performed and set work nationally. She aims to foster an appreciation of dance as a physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual pursuit. Alicia serves as the Director of Operations for the Institute for Creative Mindfulness, where she gets to combine her administrative skills with her passion for helping people find healing through self-expression with programs like Dancing Mindfulness and mental health advocacy.
She takes pride in being the supportive role which allows ICM's faculty of mental health clinicians to create and train curriculum to providers, leading to therapeutic healing for their clients.
Welcome, Alicia. So glad to have you.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Woohoo. We have so many questions to ask you. Tell us a little bit about how dance became a part of your life.
I started dancing at a very young age, so it feels like we've been doing it forever because we kind of have. I grew up in my young childhood in these apartments, and there was a dance studio literally next door to the apartment complex. And so my mom used to take me over to the studio in a wagon. And I studied there from the time I was 3 or 4 until I was 18. Ballet, tap, jazz, modern, lyrical, contemporary. Um, you know, it became something that I just really fell in love with. And not only the dancing, but being a part of a community of people with a shared interest that was, outside of the household. And yeah, that's how I found it.
I love it. So it was like right there where you were living, and I love that you went in a wagon. That is awesome.
That's so
Yeah.
cute. And you started so young.
Yes. So like obviously when I was little, I had no idea that I would still be dancing. And I think like my mom too, like when I fell in love with dance and started to pursue it more seriously, like just like had no idea what we were getting into. But very grateful that I found dance as it's kind of provided this anchor for me.
Wonderful.
I could hear your passion for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. So, well, this is a podcast about DID, right? Dissociative Identity Disorder, OSDD, and dissociation. So when did you first become aware that you were more than one?
That I loved getting these questions in advance and thinking about this, because I'm like, in a way, I feel like I intuitively there's like parts that like inner wisdom like always kind of knew, or for a while, but actually formally didn't start seeing myself as a system and doing parts work until my like mid to late 20s. I always knew, not always, but ever since my first round of treatment for anorexia at like 15, 16, knew that I dissociated, but more how I was familiar with dissociation was this idea of like going away and being numb, and the clinicians being unable to reach me, and losing time, and like feeling low. And so like I got behind like, okay, like this is something that I'm dealing with and something that I can work on. And then the parts work came later. It was very hard for me to begin to engage in that without thinking about the things that younger parts had been through. And yeah, I think once I got diagnosed with OSDD, a lot of things started making sense to me. I think I had been misdiagnosed many times and had kind of gone along for the ride of the diagnoses, even though I was like, I don't feel like I'm bipolar, but maybe for the sake of healing, I will try that hat on and learn these skills and take this medication. But, so from the time I was like 15, 16 to I think my last inpatient hospitalization, I was like 25 or 26. It was kind of just like a roller coaster, and I would do well enough for a while and then not. So.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think that's a common misdiagnosis, bipolar first,
I relate with that so much because they did diagnose me with bipolar 2 rapid cycling first and put me on an insane amount of medication that made things so much worse. So I relate so much with that.
Yeah, and you want to trust your provider, right? If they say this is what you have, like they're the expert, right? They're supposed to be.
Right, and I'm desperate and struggling to honestly just live and be in life. And so, I wanted to trust them, but it never really felt quite right.
Yeah. Was it a relief for you when they finally figured it out, or how did they diagnose you with the correct diagnosis?
Well, when I first got diagnosed, I would say I did feel a bit relieved, because it just made sense. And so I felt like, oh, finally I can start healing. But my system did this thing where it was maybe like to try and prove that, like, oh, this is what's going on. And I got very flooded at the beginning.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. How has dance impacted your trauma recovery?
Dance has provided, like I kind of said earlier, an anchor. And I think a lot of times when I've especially been in a low place, I feel so grateful in this life to have found something that I'm really passionate about and want to try to be a better person for and to live for. And for me, like that is dance. You know, I also think that dance, the language of dance and the language technique that I've learned to move my body in has given me a voice. And I think the first time I found my voice was not a literal voice, it was in moving my body. And it felt a little safer in some ways, even though of the body is vulnerable, but to express with the body instead of words, because it's a little more abstract. And so people can take from it what they want. I can show them what I want to show them as well in a certain way. You know, I think that I have literally put part of my story on stage before by choreographing and performing, exploring like emotions and feelings, especially. But I, a couple years ago, set a solo on a dancer named Cam Neese with my voice to it that was exploring some of my literal trauma narrative, and she danced the piece. And so, you know, being able to have such a vulnerable part of myself witnessed in a way that was art was very cathartic to parts.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, really, sometimes words are just not enough.
Or just aren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, a lot of times it's very confusing, especially early on, in a lot of chaos in my inner world. And then just being able to move, whether it makes sense or not, is sometimes the best thing to do. And, you know, I talked earlier about having this like kind of freeze response. And I think to like some movement is better than no movement. It doesn't necessarily mean like I have to be up and performing on a stage with lights and live music, but just like, what is the smallest thing that I can do right now to get unstuck, you know?
I like that. That's beautiful. Yeah, the small things. Sometimes that's all we need are the small things. So would you share how trauma and the eating disorder affected your journey with dance?
Oh, they're so intertwined. Especially
I figured.
then there's trauma from dance as well, or like re-traumatizing from dance as well, especially when I was, you know, studying ballet pre-professionally. My eating disorder was very much praised until it wasn't, until I became a liability, until, you know, I'm not sure what the line was exactly, but I became too thin. And that was very confusing and very hurtful to me. And, you know, I think like perfectionism. So Anna is very much tied to ballet. Anna's my part that holds a lot of the anorexia and the behaviors and rigidity. And I think Anna and ballet go hand in hand. There's a right way and there's a wrong way, and it's very black or white. You know, I also think I've had a difficult time memorizing choreography over the years, and have learned, tricks to be better at doing that. But yeah, the eating disorder and the dissociation and the trauma in ballet are very enmeshed.
Yeah, it makes sense that, these things are not separate. They're all together. They all have effects back and forth with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay. What was most difficult?
Sorry,
Sorry,
you're
go
good.
ahead. I was just going to ask the next question. What was most difficult about doing dance as someone with a trauma and dissociative history?
Yeah, I think like going into a little bit of what I was just kind of starting to talk about, so it's actually a good segue, is like, I think some of the neurodivergence that I am neurodivergent. How about that? Like, with maybe the trauma, also possibly like, ADHD and stuff, like memorizing material, memorizing a full length show, like 50 minutes of choreography to music has been really difficult, but I've picked up tricks over the years for how to do that better. I think that another thing that we kind of just have is how our brain works is aphantasia. So we don't visualize. And for dance, that's really challenging. Thinking about like formations, trying to remember what's coming next in the body. So I'm very much more like kinesthetic and like sensing. And I also constantly have this like dialogue that's just like running in my head. I think that body mapping and proprioception, so like an awareness of my body in space, how much space it's occupying, like, if I stick my arm out to the side, is it up, is it down, is it even with the shoulder, is challenging. Like I mean, still this pops in for me some, but I remember especially when I was studying ballet pre-professionally, like looking in the mirror and just being like, I know that that's me making my body move that way, but it doesn't feel like me, like, and yeah, so that's a mind fuck. And, I've been doing a lot of work with originally calling, body image dysmorphia, but I kind of like the term like body image uncertainty better for me, because I feel like, there's all these different versions of me that still live in me, and their sensation and how much space they take up, and like, are they in pain? Are they like, like I almost like don't know what I'm going to see when I look in the mirror, or when I, sometimes I get like my hand is like, oh God, who is that? That's like, there's veins, there's wrinkles, like what? And in dance, that's challenging because it's very much a benefit to be in your body. But as a trauma survivor, that brings up a lot of phobia as well, and fear. So, it's a constant kind of back and forth and what feels okay in this moment.
Yeah, I like that term uncertainty, because like the dysphoria is like, I think there's some differences between those two meanings, really, It's not that you're, depending which part you might be, but it may not be so much that you think you're a certain shape or size or whatever, but like no, your parts are literally different sizes,
Right.
And you don't feel like you're in your own body, and that's a totally different feeling, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Good stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for other trauma and dissociative survivors who may have zero experience in dance, What should they consider when deciding to add dance into their healing journey? And I don't know if this is also a good place to maybe talk a little bit more about the dancing mindfulness that you're a part of
Yeah,
or into.
totally. Dancing mindfulness was my first step back into the dance world. So, as part of my recovery journey, I took about a year off of all dance completely. And dancing mindfulness was my first step back. And I think I'll share a little bit what I think is important to look for in a dance class for yourself. But I think that dancing mindfulness could be a good fit for our community. But I think it's important to consider what feels okay right now, today, because what feels okay right now might not feel okay tomorrow. I think that do you enjoy movements? I think it's also important to name what are your hesitations, if there are any, as well as, what are you hoping to get out of the experience? And I think that the answer to those questions could help you kind of decide which type of class, because there's a million types of dance classes, might be a good fit for you. And it might take a couple to really feel like you found something that you love. But, I think it is really important, especially as a person that, maybe has some, definitely has had some negative experiences in a dance studio, to do research on the places that you're entering into. So doing research on the studio that you want to attend, even reaching out through an email, reading the instructor's bios, reading reviews. Often there's a mission and value statement or an artistic statement on the website, so you can kind of see, is that align with your personal values? How does that sit with your system? And I think one of the big things to think of is a structured dance class or an improvised dance class. So something that is structured would be named after technique, modern dance technique, ballet, and have a little bit more of a rigid format, which can be nice because there's a predictability to that, and what's coming up, and you can go into basically any ballet studio in the country, and I almost will guarantee you they're going to start with pliés. So there's something nice about that. Mm-hmm. However, if memorizing material is stressful to you, or perfectionism, you might have a tendency for that to come in. Something like dancing mindfulness or another conscious dance form or contact improv, something improvisational based might be better. In dancing mindfulness, the goal isn't to learn a codified vocabulary or a technique. It's really through a mixture of verbal facilitation, the sound of the music, getting inspiration also from the others around you to find your own way of moving. And there is no wrong way to move your body. If you want to lay on the floor the whole class and just listen to the music, cool. If you want to get up and do cartwheels and slide across the floor, cool. So kind of it's all accepted there.
I love that.
That's my kind of dance class.
Exactly. So could you elaborate a little bit more on exactly what dancing mindfulness is? I actually personally don't know that much about it. I've seen the groups, I've seen it talked about, but I don't, is this something you sign up for? Is it a class? What is it really?
Dancing mindfulness is a practice that was, I don't necessarily want to say created, because Jamie doesn't even use that word anymore, but for the sake of this conversation, started by Dr. Jamie Marich, and she is a trauma therapist, counselor, also in personal addiction recovery, and also a multiple, and kind of was trying to figure out a way to coalesce all this like information into a place that clinicians could take it into their work, that it could be more accessible to a variety of, body types, a variety of abilities. And it is a form of conscious dance. I mentioned that term earlier. And what that means is that it's a dance form that is not rooted in a technical foundation. And instead, it is much more experimental, much more attuned to sensing what's going on in your body. How do you want to move? No one's dictating movement to you. And Dancing Mindfulness, I teach a weekly class in Columbus at a studio called Flux and Flow, Wednesday nights at 6:30. There are other classes going around the country. There's still some virtual classes being held as well. And then the Institute for Creative Mindfulness hosts an annual expressive arts retreat every spring in Pennsylvania that you can experience Dancing Mindfulness there as well. Each instructor, we call ourselves facilitators since we're not really teaching, we're more facilitating. It seems subtle, but it's an important difference, I think, is able to put their own expertise and passion and things into it. So my class is different than Jamie's class. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, the nuance between words is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good distinction.
Yeah.
Very. Thank you for explaining
that.
Okay, so during season 2, we're focusing on internal communication. And so I'm going to ask you, how has dance affected your internal world and internal communication?
Yeah. So I think, like I mentioned earlier, that my internal world honestly still feels pretty chaotic, and it's confusing, and there's a lot of noise. And so sometimes like going into the studio and just like whatever comes out of my body comes out of my body. And, maybe it doesn't make sense. That's okay. Maybe it doesn't look pretty or technical, whatever, that's okay. And something that's been really helpful for me, I've been filming myself improvise for years now. And at first it was very hard to watch myself, like, the perfectionism, the, not maybe having judgments about my body, but trying to let that go and just honor my body created this today. And maybe there's a reason for that without digging too deep, but maybe there's a reason that needed to come out. And how interesting that this movement came out today on the anniversary of my grandmother's death, and maybe we're processing grief, so I keep them, and I feel like they're a movement journal of sorts. And so dance in that way has, helped us tell our story in a way that makes sense to us. Probably if I share those videos, sometimes I post some of them online as more for myself than others, but, probably doesn't mean the same thing to them as it does to me, who's in my head watching it, but I think that I also, it has helped me to make sense of experiences of even being a person that's more than one person, a person with a system, without using words. 'Cause I think kind of maybe words are inadequate in some sense to the experience. And to us, any movement feels better than being frozen. And so, thinking about dance as not just dance, but is breathing dance? I don't know. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really resonate, with that, any movement is better than frozen, right? Like when we dissociate a lot, we can get very numb, we can get very frozen and stuck. And trying to move is kind of the way to break free of that. And sometimes I think that, in general, society has just forgotten, that there are more ways to communicate than just using your words. There's such an emphasis on use your words, use your words.
Movement and dance are a form of communication.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes there are no words, or sometimes I can't find the words, or maybe I just don't want to say it today. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. I know. Yeah, I don't want to say it today. Like, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So what benefits does dance offer for not only the general population, but more specifically for those with DID or OSDD?
I think that there's a lot of benefits. I'm super passionate about dance, but I also think that, really more than anything, just finding a place that feels safe enough to be creative and express. Dance is a unique art form in a sense because it lives in the body, which is different than, visual art or something like that. All I need is my being to walk into a studio or on a stage. I don't need any tools or I don't even need music. Dance can exist on its own without music, although music is a great partnership with dance. But, I think that dance and movement perhaps could be a place to begin to be able to tap into a sense of being safe enough in the body. And maybe once you feel safe enough, you can start tapping into maybe a little bit of joy in the body. I like how this movement feels, and, maybe even, and this word is hard for us, but find pleasure in the body. Because I think that is so important. It's something that gets taken away, but this movement is very pleasurable. I love how it feels to, expand through space and, exert a lot of energy that's pleasurable to me. So, I think that's what I want to say about that. And perhaps dance is a less scary way to tap into that than maybe other ways of finding or seeking some of that sensation. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, like when you've had the trauma and the dissociation and you've been numb for so long, that feeling something, anything, or even having that sense of something that feels good can somehow feel bad at the same time because you're just not used to the feeling of good, or like it's shameful or wrong for me to have the pleasurable feeling. And so I guess you said it's a little bit easier with the dance, but I guess my thought here, and this is not a question I sent you, but what about people who find that triggering to feel that in their body and then they freeze and don't want to move their body? Like, then what?
Yeah, how do you get unstuck?
Yeah. And I will still find myself in moments of freeze. I also am a yoga, practitioner, and, sometimes it comes when you don't expect it to come too, and I think that's where starting slow, starting slow and being gentle if that does happen, and I think for me, grounding, if I'm in a dance class specifically, literally finding the ground and laying on the ground. And, this is 2024. I am in this space. I am, and then maybe you can move a little bit and maybe a little bit more. And then maybe you're up dancing again, or maybe not. Maybe that's all for you today. And I mean, you could always leave. You can leave a classroom if it's not serving you anymore. You can leave. So.
Yeah, I think that was a hard thing for all of ourselves to learn is that I don't actually have to sit here. I don't actually have to stay in this, in a place where I feel suddenly like I can get up and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was kind of revolutionary thought, processing I had there when I realized like no one's going, I'm not going to get in trouble. No one's going to make me stay. That was, yeah. So we have the freedom to do what we want.
Right.
Really.
Right. That was pretty revolutionary for us
Thank
as
you for
well.
sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is one message you'd like to leave with our audience today?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like we talked about so many good things. Let's see.
Yes.
What little points did I
This has been awesome.
write down? I think that, whether it's dance or something else, movement is important. The body is important. Keep moving. Even small movements can make a big impact. And I think seeking passion and saying yes to things that feel good inside. Yeah.
Yeah, we can say yes to feeling good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that. We can say yes to feeling good.
Yeah.
All right. So how could people find you or follow you?
Yeah. I am on Instagram, and my handle is Lee Alicia, and I'm also on Facebook, Alicia Leigh, and those would probably be the easiest places to follow me, find me, direct message me. I can send you other contact information from there.
Yeah. So, so how do you use your Instagram? Do you have videos of dancing and things on there? I mean, I looked a little bit, but tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, I do. So, my Instagram is mostly dance. I do post some personal things. And the dance is personal to me too, actually. But it's a lot of dance. I post some photos, videos. Every once in a while, you see my dogs that I'm probably love a little too much on there. Every once in a while, my husband's coffee, where we enjoy backpacking. So some of that gets on there too, but it's a lot of dance.
I love it. I'm very excited that, we got to talk about dance today. I don't think it's a modality that people really consider in their healing journey sometimes. Everyone's so focused on CBT and the talk therapy and even art therapy gets quite a bit of, attention, but, dance is a little bit different. And I think that there are a lot of benefits that our community of people with dissociation could really benefit from.
I think dance,
feel in their body.
The word,
Yeah.
when people hear dance, it's loaded. They think oh, I'm not a dancer because I don't dance with point shoes, or I'm not getting paid to dance, or I am not very coordinated or whatever. But so I think sometimes trying to take out the word dance, I taught mindful movement classes, but it's a dance class. It really is. But
Yeah. I like mindful movement.
taking out that loaded word sometimes is helpful, or starting people out on a yoga mat, because yoga is familiar, but then we're dancing though still. So, yeah.
That sounds like fun. I need to get in on some of this, I think.
Definitely. It sounds awesome.
Maybe I should
dance now.
submit a proposal for healing together or something, lead people through some movement. But
yes, you do a mindful movement session. I vote for this.
Oh, yes.
Alicia is going to submit a proposal and lead a session on mindful movement. I love it. Yes, yes. I'm going to tell Jamie. Okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us today. It was such an honor to hear your story and how dance and movement has been healing for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for hanging out with the Trio of Multiples today.
My pleasure.
We are honored to have a Gold Plus sponsor for Season 2.
The Institute for Creative Mindfulness is one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, founded and directed by Dr. Jamie Pless-Marich, author of Dissociation Made Simple. Dr. Jamie is the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural, and since 2015, she's offered the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We have never felt more accepted and validated as a multiple than when we were able to show up authentically as Garden System for our basic EMDR training. Having lived experience is valued and respected in these training courses.
Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers.
Are you interested in becoming a sponsor? Please send an email to admin@acoupleofmultiples.com to request more information.
From your host, Drew,
In Garden System.
thank you for listening to A Couple of Multiples, the reality of dissociative identity disorder. This podcast is intended for educational purposes and is not a replacement for therapy.
Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapeutic relationship with the hosts or any guest speakers.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear what you enjoyed the most.
You can visit our website at acoupleofmultiples.com for additional information, including how to join our new online paid community called Hearts Multiplied, to access additional resources, and to also subscribe to our mailing list to receive future updates.
Remember, you matter and are loved for being all of yous.